Hi everyone, this is Zach from your ACTE 632 course, and I wanted to share with you my unit that I created for our course. And so I have here just the opening phase of what that looks like. So it's a product design course related to the design process. And so on the first page or on the home page here, I get the students started by looking at the Getting Started Online, video. And then there's a pretest as well. And so this stuff is right there at the beginning for the students to see and complete. And then our unit, and then obviously a discussion board for having any issues with technology. And so as you look at my unit, you might notice that there are some similarities between this and maybe some of the courses that Dr. Dre provides online. And I felt that his courses provided a good starting place for kind of creating our own online courses. So I adopted some of the things that he does and try to tweak things as they seemed fit for me. So as far as communication, this course is completely, or the unit that I provided is completely 100% asynchronous. And the reason I did that is because all the other online courses that our district offers are also asynchronous. So there's no actual face-to-face or maybe online face-to-face time between the students and the teachers. So I thought that because of that reason, it only made sense to continue that pattern and not try to make something new if I didn't need to. If looking into the future, maybe a synchronous lesson here or there might be good for an online class or course. However, for this unit, I felt like I could get away with this all asynchronous classes or modules. The communication between me and the students happens through multiple ways. Obviously, the content is delivered online, so it's all going to be in the modules, which I'll show you. There's also a way for students to contact me if there's any problems, though, or if they just have a question or want me to look over something. That can happen through Schoology message, which I actually use a lot in all of my classes and clubs and things like that. So I found that to be pretty useful, and students find that to be pretty easy to quick send me a message if they have an issue. We also have discussion boards throughout the module to deliver some of the content or provide feedback to each other, as far as student to student and student to teacher as well. And as a last resort, if there's still issues and they're not related to technology, like the discussion board is here, students can also email me, and I can take a look at the email as soon as possible. The great thing about Schoology is that there's an app, so I do have that on my phone. And so if I do get a message, it comes up directly to my phone, and I can see that there's a notification for myself to look at. The great thing about Schoology is that students have found this to be very easy to work with, and they're comfortable asking questions or responding to their peers as they need to. Looking at the pretest itself, so I'll kind of just skip around, look at some of the assessments here. The first thing I want to point out is that I like to use multiple types of questions, or vary the type of questions. So we got multiple choice, true and false, and also some ordering in here. The reason I do that is just so the students don't get comfortable to the point where they can just pick an answer and hope for the best. I do want the students to be able to have to think a little bit more than, you got a 25% chance here of getting this correct, at least most of the time. So that was the reason for the types of questions that I put into my pretest to see how this would play out. Looking at then the actual the unit itself that we had to create 3 modules. There is a course overview or instructions provided for each module, as well as the entire unit itself, which was on that front page. So I tried to look at 1.1 in our course overview and intro standards under the QM standards. So making sure that there is a video recording, which is again right here. But then also there is a recording at the beginning of each module, which is in Module 1 Overview. So there's a page there. It shows the learning objectives. It shows an overview of what's going to happen, where the student's going to be assigned to do, and then it also lays it out in text format as well. Under learning objectives, the standards that I focused on were 2.1 and 2.4. And so I tried to make sure that the objectives were written from a student's perspective. because I think that it's important for the students to be able to understand clearly what is being expected of them, or what are the tasks that we're trying to do to complete these learning objectives or focus on for the module. So I thought that these were well written to the point where students would be able to understand and kind of look at it from their perspective. It also helped to explain the assignments that they were going to be creating or doing, as it kind of set the stage for them, and I think that kind of goes well with the video that I create here as we look at the overview page. As far as assessments and resources, so in each module there's a list of resources provided. These links are also right here in the assignments, so I try to make sure that's consistent as I go through each module. I also looked at different types of assessments. So under our QM standards 3.5, there are multiple types of assessments throughout the unit. We have Ed puzzles, so this would be the shopping cart videos and Ed puzzle, where the students have to watch the video, answer questions. There's also a discussion board, so looking at a bad design. In students' lives, they were asked to, and I know this is supposed to be done outside of school, but of course with the time constraints, a lot of students were using time during school to finish this or complete the assignments. And so, they were asked to look at a bad design and figure out, how can we fix that? So the doorway here, obviously there are solutions already out there for this, but they had to explain why it was a bad design to them. And so I thought that was kind of interesting to see what their perspective was and their reasoning for that. The one thing that would definitely need to be worked on a little bit is the expectations that, not only are you supposed to post, but you also have to reply. That was not shown here in the discussion board. Looking at Module 2 then, this was the research section of the design process. Not only do I look for different types of assessments. There's 2 assessments here, a discussion board, also just a submission. But I also want to make sure that the materials that I provide are meaningful to the students as well. Not only is it something that's going to help them in the content or creating the final outcome that meets the learning objectives, but also something that could be useful later down the road. So I looked at, for example, Adobe Illustrator Ed Puzzle. Now this was a part of a graded assignment, but then also having the students be able to look back at this video at a later time and say, oh yeah, that's right, I forgot that's how you do this in Adobe. I thought that was a meaningful resource for them. So 4.1 was the QM standard that I looked at. In addition to that, as we looked at in our unit or in this course, ACTE 632, as Dr. Dreon kind of scaffolded the units or the modules for us, we found that we were slowly making our way to the end goal, which was our unit. And so I tried to kind of do the same thing in this unit as well, as students start with understanding why do we do this, and then looking at some of the steps, and then finally reaching that end goal in Module 3. And I thought this was a good idea only because if you throw all the content at students, sometimes they get a little overwhelmed with seeing all this, and so this provided a way for me to kind of chunk the information for them. So here you have again the module resources, the assignments, and the same overview page in Module 2. Now in Module 3, we looked at modeling the solution, and so unfortunately I didn't have any students have an opportunity to complete this portion of the task. And I'll explain why in a minute. But looking at learner interaction, I thought QM standard 5.2, it really does occur between the students and also between the student and myself. And the reason that happens or would happen is because there would be a presentation portion which would not be shared necessarily with all of the students, but just to me directly until they would be able to, until they post their video responses. Now this allows for positive feedback to occur, and also allows us to kind of see the process that students go through and how students think differently to produce a final product. So I thought that was a great thing to think about as we look at our units, the learner interaction. Now, our course technology that I utilize, I try to make sure that between each module, the navigation of the modules were pretty similar. There might be a few differences between them, only because maybe a difference in the assignment. But overall, I thought that the course technology was the same. I also tried to, or from the survey I also found out that like the internet access was not an issue, and so I went ahead and made sure that the unit focused on the Adobe Suite, so using design software that was already available to all the students on their laptops, and they all had internet access. So I know that they could access all the material that's here. So I thought that was kind of important as I went ahead and did some research to figure out what was I going to include in my module. The two sections of QM standards that I really didn't look at, I feel like I should have spent a little bit more time on, was the learner support and accessibility. So this is definitely something I need to focus more on to ensure that I'm meeting each student's learning needs. There's clearly some room for improvement in my unit, but I thought that this was a good starting point for what I have completed so far. As far as assessments, the students are going to demonstrate their learning by displaying their brainstorm sketches. So the project for this unit was to create not only a new logo for Wilbur, but then to also deliver a model, or create a model and display it for us in Schoology for an amusement park for Wilbur Chocolate. So much like Hershey Park. And so this was definitely something that was relatable to the students. As I looked at their student reactions and kind of their feedback, I also found that it was pretty easy to get started in the unit. What was kind of difficult was the fact that there were so many options. You know, when I make something vague like this, sometimes I have a little trouble getting students started. But once they have a direction, they're okay. So maybe there needs to be a little bit more direction up front. Before the students were to get started on their own, because this is an individual, or these are individual assignments. So as I looked at ways that I have created my unit and how well I've done, I think the layout overall is a good start. The links are working well in each of the modules, and so there's no issues. Making sure that the content is accessible to the students, but there's definitely some areas to work on and polish up. One of the big ones that was not focused on during this unit was deadlines, because of having students working on something one day and maybe not another day. I wasn't sure how to approach deadlines yet and due dates for the unit. It's definitely something, if I'm going to utilize this, to look at in the future. Obviously, making sure things are accessible. I had a little issue at the beginning with my pre-test and making sure that was enabled for students to actually click on. So I found that to be a quick fix, but for some reason I still always forget to do that. And then my expectations. There might be an opportunity for me to model some of the outcomes for the modules. And the reason I'm saying that is because the discussion boards tend to be something that students kind of lack, or they just complete just to get it done and move on. So there's definitely some room for improvement there. One of the things that I kind of thought about as I was waiting for students to begin responding was, did I provide too much work for them to complete in a 3-day unit, or three modules? Am I asking too much of the students? And so I think that's something that I need to look at as I try to utilize this in my courses. And then the other one is, okay, I utilized this pilot this course with maybe a handful of students. How is this going to look with 24 students? So this is definitely something that I'm still, hoping that I don't have to pilot with or do with 24 students, but I do like the idea of online courses. I just, I struggle with the idea of trying to manage all of that online. So just a couple things that I thought about as I was wrapping up this unit. So I hopefully you found this interesting and were able to get a little taste of what my unit was about. I look forward to hearing your comments in D2L. Thanks.